The Last of Us is possibly the greatest story ever told in a game, yet its HBO adaptation is a masterful reimagining of its story, taking it to a whole new level of complexity that the game could only hint at. This complexity is achieved mainly through the show's unique use of perspective, which brings the world to life and fleshes out the characters in a way the game could never do. This is a limitation of the video game medium itself, as the scenes in story-driven games need to be integrated with gameplay seamlessly, which makes it harder to have long sequences with no gameplay without making the experience boring. A show, however, has more creative freedom and can get away with much more in terms of deviating from the main story to build the world. The show often adds aspects that never existed in the game and aren't necessary, but definitely improve the overall experience of the story. For example, in The Last of Us game, these two people are killed, which doesn't mean much, especially considering the fact that we've killed dozens of people by this point. But in the show, this kill is much more personal, where we see how traumatized Joel still is by Sarah's death while also showing the lengths Joel will go to protect the people he loves. This is also seen in Joel's motivation to go west. He isn't just going west out of blind hope for a cure like in the game, but also wants to see if Tommy is safe, which adds more purpose to the story. This brings me on to the cinematography. Unlike the game, which sticks to fairly conventional cinematography and otherwise having the generic third-person action game camera angle, the show uses creative methods to heighten the emotion that the viewer is supposed to feel. For example, look at the opening scene, where we start off with familiar shots of a talk show. But as the conversation gets more sinister, the cinematography switches to unnerving close-ups, elevating the sense of dread for what's to come. I also love how the show has much fewer infected than the game, with the infected being more powerful than in the game. This not only makes the infected much more dangerous, but it also proves that, contrary to popular belief, The Last of Us is not a story about zombies, but rather about humans and how the outbreak revealed the animalistic side of humanity that we all have within us as a biological mechanism to protect those we love, which was suppressed under societal boundaries. As Bill from the game once said,
"The normal people that scare me."
Which brings us on to possibly the most controversial topic of the show. Bill. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty bummed out that we didn't get to see the classic Bill and Ellie banter from the game at first, but watching episode 3 a second time really hit home how much of a masterpiece that episode's story is. On the surface, Bill is possibly the most masculine man imaginable. He looks rugged with an unkempt beard, has a wide collection of guns, is an antisocial reclusive basement dweller and pessimistic conspiracy theorist, thrives off of his hatred for society, is self-sustaining, and does possibly every masculine thing that one can do. That is until we have a slight shift in perspective and realize that he is a closeted gay man that was too ashamed to admit his true feelings. Bill's story shows the struggle and eventual bliss of cautiously opening up to that special someone, which is a direct parallel to Joel and Ellie's relationship. Speaking of parallels, Joel's heart-wrenching story about attempting suicide adds so much emotion to the story. For example, when Sam died, Joel instantly recognized how it must have felt for Henry and that Henry might kill himself because Joel has been through the same situation with Sarah.
Sarah died, and I couldn't see the point anymore.
Also, keen viewers might connect the dots and figure out that the reason Joel is deaf in his right ear is because of his suicide attempt.
Notice you don't hear too well from your right side. Is it because you were shot there?
Henry and Joel both did arguably selfish actions to save those that they love. This Kathleen monologue really hits home how similar Henry and Joel's stories are.
Well, kids die, Henry. They die all the time. You think the whole world revolves around him? That he's worth everything? Well, this is what happens when you fuck with fate.
Another parallel involves Marlene, who, like Joel, experienced the death of a person who's very close to her. Marlene fights so hard to get Ellie to die because she wants Anna's death to mean something. She, like Joel, has a selfish motivation to do a horrible thing, which makes Joel's actions more sympathetic. There is also a parallel between Joel and the cordyceps, which is explained perfectly by David.
What does cordyceps do? Is it evil? No. It's fruitful, it multiplies, it feeds and protects its children. And it secures its future with violence if it must.
All of these parallels exist exclusively in the show thanks to slight perspective shifts on situations that already existed in the game. These slight changes are seemingly meaningless at first, but they add up to make the story more cohesive than that of the game. Also, The Last of Us series takes place in 2023 rather than 2033, which really makes the story hit home, considering what happened a few years ago. There is also chilling parallels between the show and real life, with The Last of Us not being too far-fetched considering global warming is getting worse by the day.
Currently, there are no reasons for fungi to evolve to be able to withstand higher temperatures. But what if that were to change? What if, for instance, the world were to get slightly warmer? Well, now, there is reason to evolve.
People in The Last of Us show love through protection, and protecting someone is cute and all until you switch perspectives, which brings us on to David. On the surface, David is a loving leader who protects the people under him. That's until you get a closer look on his right-hand man, James. In the game, it looks like James is more aware of how Ellie may harm David, but in the series, it's the other way around. James knows what David's plans are with Ellie, and he really hates David deep inside but knows that he can't survive outside of the group, so he sticks to David against his better judgment. Seeing everyone eat human meat, knowing deep inside they're eating one of their own is chilling in a way the game can never show. Seeing Ellie kill David 2 seconds away from getting raped is similarly haunting. Also, the idea of cordyceps originating from flour adds some substance to the story and adds perspective on how close Joel and his family got to getting infected. I personally find the giraffe scene in the series to be much better than in the game, which is mainly because of this look that Joel gives Ellie, which is the exact moment where I realized that Pedro Pascal became the Joel we all know and love. I also love the soundtrack for the series, where they mostly took songs from the games and remixed them to give them a somber tone. This is most prevalent in this scene in the finale. I don't hate the game in any way, as it is my all-time favorite video game. But the show has made clear improvements to the source material in ways that I would have never fathomed a year ago. I understand people's complaints about the season being a bit rushed, but to me, HBO's The Last of Us is perfect.
Okay.